to law in a political system that may not be calibrated for it. So go for it, Ben. And he has no slides because this is a slide-free presentation.
Thanks, Meredith. And thanks, Scott. That was a really great introduction to net neutrality. I'm not going to talk about the technical aspects of everything, but I'm just going to talk about the political sausage factory that we saw happen when we wrote this law and everything that happened until we got it enacted. So it's basically a kind of a case study of making internet law. I've got to tell you, it's the safe for work version. There's a lot more that happened behind the scenes that can't be said right here. But basically what happened, I was working at a law firm, and then I got a job in the European Parliament to work on internet regulation. So in the period between switching jobs, I did some pro bono work with a civil society organization here at Amsterdam called Bits of Freedom. I'm sure quite a few of you know it. And we were just having lunch and thinking of what I could do in those months that I was hanging around there. And one of the things was working on an internet, or how would we codify internet freedom in law, was kind of the question we came up with. So me and some people there started working on it, doing some background reading on what actually is internet freedom, what actually is freedom, and those kind of questions. And then we identified some areas that were interesting. One was, of course, net neutrality. Others was, wiretapping laws or deep packet inspection laws, these kind of things. We finished the document. It was quite vague for most people that we presented it to. I went to Brussels. I left it to them to maybe do something nice with it. So they started going to journalists to explain what we're actually trying to do here. Journalists didn't really get it. We went to some politicians just to sort of check what they thought of it. Also didn't really get it. It was a little bit too hypothetical. They asked us for examples, so we'd say things like, what if, for example, the incumbent telecom operator would accept money from YouTube and then slow down Dailymotion and Vimeo websites, for example. And then the journalist would say, yeah, it's hypothetical, that's not happening. So, we don't get what you're saying. So then we started talking about these other pretty bad analogies of, for example, think of privatizing highways, and then the owner of a certain part of a highway would get the rights to close down the routes to petrol stations if they didn't pay their fee. And then people started understanding, but still it was a little bit too hypothetical. And the issue is, if you want to table an amendment or a new law in politics, you only really get one chance, or you have to wait several years. So what you really need to do is get that support beforehand, and then find the people who will table that amendment, and then just make sure that when the vote happens, the majority votes in favor. So it was a difficult process. And just a little bit about this process. When I say we, I was already in the European Parliament, but I was following all the steps and I was talking to them. But what they thought is they'd go to the sort of slightly right-leaning Liberal Party in the Netherlands. I'm not going to name any names, Dutch people know which party I mean. But and because we thought, this would be the party that would be most interested in understanding this free market thing that we were trying to create. But they went to the politician, and the politician wasn't particularly interested at all. This was the representative for the telecom committee. And she wasn't interested, and she thought it was nonsense. What turned out later is she used to be the lobbyist for KPN, the Dutch incumbent telecom operator, in this nice revolving door of politics. She was sitting in the parliament and basically sent this group of people away. Now, it's no surprise, it's no secret, this became a law, so this became a huge issue within that party, that she just sent them away and they could have had this nice victory. So what they then did is they went to this slightly left-leaning party, the party which I happen to work for in Brussels, and told the story of net neutrality. And they got it. I mean, they're a liberal party. They're all for civil liberties, internet freedom loving. So my colleague in The Hague called me in Brussels, and he said, Ben, you're our internet regulation guy. Can I send you a document? Because some lobbyists or some activists from Bits of Freedom just explained this amazing new concept of net neutrality to me, and I don't quite know what to make of it. So I said, sure, send it over. So I got it, and I think I waited for about half an hour, probably went for a coffee and stared out the window for a bit, pretended to have read the thing. And I called him back, and I said, this is great, this is excellent, you should really, really go for this. Well written, well thought through. So the party, and this is politics, and this is how it goes. It's not in the committees when everyone has their positions and stuff. It's all about, who do you know, and who did you speak to over drinks, or what did you write before. The party did decide to support this amendment, but still it was quite a fairly small party in the Netherlands. I can't quite remember the percentage, but it's usually around 15% of the parliament that they have, which is far off from 50% that you need. So they went to some other parties, for example, the Labour type party or the Green Party, and there was some understanding of why it was relevant, but also there was no urgency, so there was no real support. The party of the sitting minister of economic affairs was the Christian Democratic Party. Fairly conservative party, not known to be particularly tech savvy, as Dutch people here probably know. They didn't actually understand the concept, so basically decided not to support, which is a shame because the minister was the main guy who would he'd have to enact this. So all these parties were a bit confused. Then they went to the very right-wing party, which is as a sort of internet freedom, civil liberties kind of activist group. You don't want to work too much with this, anti-immigration. You all know Geert Wilders, what he stands for. But still, they needed support. This party was quite big at the time. It was kind of being ignored by some other parties in the parliament. But they spoke to the guy who was responsible for internet and telecom stuff, and he understood this, he said, because back in the day, back in the 90s, he used to have a website where he had MP3s, so he understood what internet freedom was all about. He was the forerunner of Spotify, and so he understood what net neutrality meant, he said, and I think probably he did. And then there was, that party actually decided to support this as well, so the support was growing. But then there was a problem with the very strict Christian parties. I think there's 2 in the Netherlands at the moment. They wanted to have a Christian internet, which would be filtered at ISP level. So, and they had been talking to some companies who were able to, provide this biblical view of the internet. So they could not support net neutrality, but then when they started explaining that actually it's probably more beneficial for people who want that to filter on their home computer instead of burdening the rest of society with that view. Anyway, much confusion, many technical discussions that most politicians weren't able to follow. But then the magic happened. We call it WhatsApp Gate. So the Dutch incumbent telecom operator in London at their shareholders meeting announced that they had found the way to regain the income that they've been losing from people using WhatsApp. So people were using SMS less, which was their cash cow. But they'd found the thing. They were going to use this new awesome technology called deep packet inspection. And they were going to find out who was using WhatsApp and then charge them either for the messages or just for using the services. And that would compensate the loss of SMS, and then everyone would be happy again. This was filmed. A journalist found it, put it on the website, and there was a general uproar in the Netherlands. This was in 2011, 4 years ago. I'm sure several people here remember it. That consumers, that they felt cheated, that there was this new service, that's based on data, it's innovation, and it was a free messaging service. So, It should have been fine. This Bits of Freedom, the civil society organization, was also quite quick to, add some oil to this fire. And what they did is they created this website where you could report KPN to the police for illegally wiretapping you for this deep packet inspection and privacy invasion. However, the police didn't really know what to do. Public prosecutor didn't really know what to do. It was a little bit vague, but this created a lot of media hype. So suddenly, all these parties were super interested in this amendment because that was what it was about. It was about keeping WhatsApp alive and getting rid of this SMS compensation. And the funny thing was, in these discussions with the minister at the time, he really didn't understand it. He also really didn't care. And suddenly he saw this political opportunity, which these guys explained to him. They said, if you now support net neutrality, then all these young voters, all these people who are about to become of voting age, will like you. So without really, and should probably not be saying this, but I think without really understanding what he was doing, he recorded a video saying, I'm in full support of this net neutrality law, published it online really quickly. Everyone was surprised by why he would say that. And then suddenly all the parties decided to support as well. Amendment went through pretty quickly. It was quite a chaotic vote. Of course, with the right-leaning Liberal Party, the certain politician was not able to vote in favor, but more or less everyone else did. And that's how this law came to be. Thank you.
That was delightful. It's dirty business. Does anyone have a quick question? Elise?
Filiz Yılmaz. Thank you for the insights. This was very enlightening. I reside in Netherlands, so I got a bit of extra information here. I'm wondering, since you are one of the authors and who helped with these laws, now they've been in place for a while. Do you go back and check what has been the impact and how the providers were, using them or not using them, or what the impact was, and have there been other projects within their own that to work around, maybe come up with certain services or not to come up with them? Do you have a follow-up after this?
Not me. I had a different job then. I was working on sometimes on European net neutrality laws, but I've also left that now. I'm now in academia. So not me, but I know that the people at Bits of Freedom did actively follow up, and the people working at the Dutch ministry really scrutinized the law and checked it on all different sides. I'm unsure about if there were detailed measurements taken to see, like specifically in the Netherlands. I know BEREC, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, have done European-wide measurements, but I haven't followed it closely, unfortunately, because I've shifted my focus to other topics.
Well, Meredith, just as a note for the chairs and Maria as well, that would be a nice thing that I would like to see as a next follow-up for this.
Noted, totally. And for anyone who is interested, Bits of Freedom will be speaking in the second co-op working group this afternoon. So they're talking about their privacy work, but you may be able to make a connection and see what they're up to there. Cool. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks so.
Great. So next up we have the inimitable Mike Blanche is going to be giving an overview of the FCC's open internet order.